to present this drama entitled Shout, for Jehovah has given you the city, Brother McLaughlin.
The Israelites waited for 40 years after leaving Egypt before they were permitted to enter and possess the promised land. This was because they questioned God's power to give their enemies into their hands. This lack of faith proved fatal to those who were 20 years of age and older among them, because they were sentenced to die in the wilderness. Today, Jehovah's people are preparing to enter another promised land. And while the wilderness wandering of the congregation of ancient Israel and its time feature have no particular prophetic parallel in this connection, still there are features that we can consider with profit. The Israelites of old knew they would have an active part in the conquest of the land, but they relied entirely on Jehovah for the victory, not knowing how he would direct them, but eagerly and confidently following his lead. We too know that Jehovah will be fighting for his people today. But instead of viewing the conquest of Canaan from the standpoint of the invading Israelites, suppose we put ourselves in the place of those whose homes and way of life were threatened. We live in a world society that is doomed. We are closely associated in our everyday activity with a people whose way of life is ending. Are we part of it in any way, or have we separated ourselves from it completely? Are we looking to find safety and protection according to our own way of thinking, or are we waiting confidently on Jehovah for deliverance according to his own provision for us? Let's listen to the discussion of these questions by this theocratic family gathered around the kitchen table.
Remember, Dad? You said when we finished our family watchtower study tonight, I could ask a question. Remember, huh?
I remember, son. Do you remember what your question was?
Oh, sure. How are we going to know what we're supposed to do when Armageddon begins?
Barry, that's a silly question.
It is not.
Well, it is a little unexpected, Barry. Why do you ask?
Because I was doing a little figuring the other day. You remember how I asked you how long the Great Tribulation is going to be?
Yes, and I told you we don't know for sure.
Except Jesus said, unless those days were cut short, no flesh would be saved.
Well, that's true, Ginny, but we can't say just how short they'll be cut.
I know that. But anyway, I got to thinking how many people there are in the world. And, well, it gets kind of scary when you think of all those people dying in such a short time.
Whatever made you think of that?
We're studying percentages in math class now, and I figured it out. If only 1% of all the people in the world were saved, that would be 35 million people.
I don't think there'll be that many saved. Do you, Daddy?
I don't think we should even try to guess, but...
I wasn't trying to guess, Dad.
Besides, you were talking a minute ago about all the people dying, not those being saved.
I know, but that's what started me thinking. I figured, even if Armageddon lasts a whole year, that would mean almost 10 million people would have to die every day.
10 million people in one day.
10 million people every day on the average.
I think we get your point, Barry. And as you put it, it is scary. But we should be in fear of that day, in fear of Jehovah, that is.
I remember in the book of Habakkuk, the prophet spoke of Jehovah's anger expressed against his enemies, and he said, I heard, and my belly began to be agitated. At the sound, my lips quivered. Rottenness began to enter into my bones.
That's right. And yet it says in Psalm 91, it was probably Moses who wrote it. He said, 1,000 will fall at your very side, and 10,000 at your right hand. To you it will not come near.
Oh, I remember that. That's in our songbook. Song number 44, Jehovah is our refuge.
That's right, Ginny.
Though thousands you will see fall, yes, at your very side.
Very good, Ginny.
I think that's a beautiful song. And the thought of that verse is just what you were talking about, Barry.
Except the psalmist says we don't need to worry.
Oh, I wasn't really worrying. It's scary, but I know Jehovah will protect us. I just wondered if we'd have to do anything ourselves.
We can't answer that question. Not now, anyway. Except to be dedicated and baptized and live according to God's will for us. But I'm sure that isn't what you meant.
No, I was thinking Armageddon is going to be like earthquakes, floods, and other things all at once, isn't it?
We don't know for sure, Barry. It might well be that the physical elements will be involved in some way. It certainly seems reasonable that they will be.
Some prophecies seem to indicate that they will. We do know, though, that Jesus and his angelic hosts will be doing the fighting. But
I know that. But when the brothers in Nicaragua had an earthquake, they couldn't drink the water, and they didn't have any food.
But they were taken care of.
you know that the brothers came in immediately from nearby countries. And it was just the same in Peru a couple of years ago.
Sure, I know. But what I mean is, suppose the brothers in these other countries were having the same kind of trouble. Suppose they were having earthquakes and floods in all of the countries, every place. Then who would there be to bring in the food and water?
I think I see your point, Barry. Does this disturb you a little? Are you concerned over what might happen?
No, I just wondered, that's all. We can't get by very long without water, and if all the water's bad...
Well, Barry, do you think that we're going to have to do something about it ourselves?
Don't you think Jehovah can provide anything we need?
Sure I do. I just wondered, that's all.
Jehovah can do anything. You know what he did when the Israelites were in the wilderness, when they needed water.
Sure, I know. Moses hit the rock and the water came right out of the rock.
Well, Jehovah can do the same thing again if
I
he
know
wanted to.
that. But sometimes he lets us do things ourselves.
That's true, Barry. And I'm sure Jehovah wants us to do everything we can that's practical and sensible. And I'm confident that our brothers will do just that whenever the need arises. But sometimes Jehovah lets us experience hardships. And if it's necessary to test our faith or to let us share in the vindication of God's name, then we're willing to accept anything he permits. But to answer your question a little more specifically, Barry, so far, Jehovah has revealed nothing to us that we're to do for our own protection, other, that is, than to remain faithful, continue with the preaching work, and stay close to the organization. And those things are very important. Now, if he tells us something more than that in the future, well, that remains to be seen. But whether he does or not, we can have absolute faith that Jehovah will preserve a great crowd through Armageddon. The Bible prophecies are very clear on that. Now, how he'll do it is not for us to say. It may be at this point that it's better for us not to know. But that has always been true.
Noah was told to build an ark, though, and he got into the ark with all the animals.
That's true.
And Jesus told Christians in Jerusalem to get out of the city.
That's true, too. But, well, let's take an example from the Bible where Jehovah did preserve someone alive right in the midst of those who were destroyed. Let's take the account of Rahab.
When the walls of Jericho fell?
Exactly. Now, you remember the story. The spies that came into Jericho promised Rahab that they'd save her alive when the Israelites took the city, because she hadn't exposed them to the men of Jericho when they came looking for them. Now, did they tell Rahab just how she was going to be saved alive?
They told her to stay in her house and not to go out.
That's it, exactly. And we can imagine that it must have been quite a tense time for Rahab and her family, there inside her house with the Israelites camped outside. They had no way of knowing when the attack would begin, nor did they know exactly how it would take place. Did the spies tell Rahab that the walls of the city were going to fall down?
No,
I don't think
I
so.
guess not.
No, they didn't. They didn't even know it themselves at the time. But they were acting in faith, confident that Jehovah was going to grant them the victory. And so Rahab waited in faith, not knowing how Jehovah was going to provide deliverance. But she didn't question it, and her faith was rewarded.
Tell us the story again, Daddy.
Yes, Dad, tell us the story.
All right. It's in the book of Joshua. You know, chapters 2 to 6. And suppose we tell the story from inside Rahab's house and try to picture her salvation the way it might have appeared to her and her family.
Come in. Welcome to my humble home, and may you find peace here. Come in.
We've come here seeking lodging. We're travelers from a distant place. We have business in Jericho and must stay overnight. We were told in the city we could find lodging here.
Please, come in and sit down. I'll bring wine that you may refresh yourselves.
We'll accept wine in order that we may not arouse suspicion. But we need only pretend that we're drinking of it.
It's best. We're on a holy mission and in the land of the enemy. We must keep alert. And in this way we can fulfill our assignment. Perhaps we can draw this woman out and learn more about the attitude of the people of the city.
Here is bread and wine. It will refresh you. Have you, come a long way today?
We've been in Jericho since about the noon hour, but our business will keep us until tomorrow.
Are you sure there's no other way in which I may serve you tonight?
No, thank you. We'll eat and retire early so that we can be up before the dawn.
As you say, my lord. Did you, come in by way of the Jordan fords this morning?
Why do you ask?
I thought perhaps you may have seen the camp of the Israelites. We are interested in any news we may receive of them.
We've heard much of the Israelites in the marketplace today. What do you think they intend to do?
It's said they intend to occupy the land of Canaan.
But you need have no fear. Are not the men of Canaan very strong, and are they not well prepared for the war?
The men of Canaan are strong, and our men of Jericho have never been among the least. But it's been reported to us that the God of the sons of Israel is a powerful God. Have you not heard that he delivered both Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of Bashan, into their hands? And now, here they are camped in Shittim on the other side of the Jordan, and their faces are turned in this direction. And fear has seized hold of all the inhabitants of Jericho.
And you? Are you not afraid?
If I say yes, then you'll say I lack faith in Baal to deliver us. But if I say no, then you'll say I'm putting my faith in Jehovah, the God of the sons of Israel.
Why then do the men of Jericho fear?
They do not exercise faith in the God of Israel, but they're fearful that he's more powerful than Baal. And the inhabitants of the land have become disheartened because of the sons of Israel. And there's no spirit left in them. But you men, do you not too fear that you may be found in the city when the sons of Israel attack?
Tomorrow we'll be gone. And as you say, the sons of Israel are on the other side of the Jordan River. How then can they attack overnight with the waters at flood stage?
You do not reckon according to the power of their God Jehovah. Did he not cause the waters of the Red Sea to rise up so that the entire nation of Israel crossed on dry ground? And when Pharaoh would pursue after them, did he not cause the waters of the Red Sea to come down upon them and destroy Pharaoh and all his horsemen?
Do you believe these reports?
I know for a certainty they are true.
Do you not fear to tell us these things, seeing that we are strangers to you and your people?
I do not fear, for I know that you yourselves are from the sons of Israel.
Why do you say that?
You came into Jericho as strangers. You come to my house, the house of a harlot, and you seek only bread and wine and a place to lodge. When I serve you wine, you don't drink it. But instead you ask me many questions about me and my people and about our concern for the Israelites. You have indeed come to spy out the land.
What are you saying?
Do not be angry with your slave girl, my lords, and let my soul find favor in your eyes. I'm not your enemy. I, too, have faith in the true God, Jehovah. He has indeed proved himself to be a God of saving acts for the sons of Israel, a God who promises and who abides by his promises. It has been told to me that many years ago your God, Jehovah, promised this land to Abraham, your father. Now I believe he intends to give this land to you. This doesn't make me unhappy, even though I'm a Canaanite, and though I reside in the land, in the city of Jericho. Jehovah is a God worthy to be worshipped. But come now, you men are in danger here. If I have come to know that you are Israelites, then for a certainty there must be others in the city who have suspected the same thing, and they are certain to come looking for you. Ever since you arrived, I have known what it is that I must do. And now here is the thing that...
Rahab! Rahab, open the door!
Here now, you two. Go out this way and up to the roof. Your voice has the sound of that of Heather.
It is! Open up, I say!
There you will find stalks of flax laid in rows.
Rahab?
Hide there until I get rid of these men. Go away, Heather. I don't want to see you tonight. They have come to seek you out. Quickly now.
Open up, I say, Rahab. I'm here on business of the king. Let me in at once.
Why did you not say so when you arrived, Heather, instead of banging on my door like some wild man? The door isn't locked. Come in.
Bring out the two men that came to you, Rahab, that have come into your house, for it is to search out the land that they have come.
And what do I have to do with the two men that you say have come into my house? They come and they go. I do not know of what two men you speak.
They were not men of Jericho. They were strangers. And they came into your house.
Oh, now I know. Yes, the men did come to me. And I did not know from where they were. And it came about at the closing of the gate at dark that the men went out. I just do not know where the men have gone. Chase after them quickly, for you'll overtake them.
Then they must be headed for the fords of Jordan. Come, we'll chase after them. Arvid, have the men shut the gate immediately after we've gone out.
As you say, Heather.
The men who came here to seek you out have gone out from here, and they've chased out after you in the direction of the Jordan at the fords, and they've shut the gate after them so that no one may come in or go out without their knowing of it. But see now, I do know that Jehovah will certainly give you the land, and that the fright of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land have become disheartened because of you. For I have heard how Jehovah dried up the waters of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, namely Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. When we got to hear of it, then our hearts began to melt, and no spirit has arisen yet in anybody because of you. For Jehovah your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. But now, please, swear to me by Jehovah that because I have exercised loving kindness toward you, you also will certainly exercise loving kindness toward the household of my father. And you must give me a trustworthy sign. And you must preserve alive my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters and all who belong to them. And you must deliver our souls from death.
Our very lives we give you as a pledge. Our souls are to die instead of you people. If you will not tell about this matter of ours, it must also occur that when Jehovah gives us the land, we shall also certainly exercise loving kindness and trustworthiness toward you.
See now, you must descend through my window by this rope, for my house is on a side of the wall of the city, and it is on the wall that I'm dwelling. In this way you can pass on out of the city, and no one at the gate will know it. Go into the mountainous region, that those in pursuit may not come in contact with you. And you must keep hid there 3 days, until those in pursuit have come back. And afterward, you may go in your own direction.
We are free from guilt respecting this oath of yours that you have made us swear. Look, we are coming into the land. This cord of scarlet thread you should tie in the window by which you have had us descend. Your father and your mother and your brothers and all the household of your father you should gather to yourself into the house. And it must occur that anyone who goes out of the doors of your house into the open, his blood will be upon his own head, and we shall be free from guilt. And everyone who continues with you in the house, his blood will be on our heads if a hand should come upon him.
And if you should report this matter of ours, we shall also have become free from guilt respecting this oath of yours.
According to your words, so let it be.
That the 2 men from the sons of Israel came into your house last night.
I said nothing about there being men of Israel.
But men from the king did come seeking 2 spies. And you told them they had left by the city gate and had gone down by the fords of the Jordan. You must have known they were spies from Israel.
Heather seemed quite certain of it. He stormed in here last night demanding that I produce 2 spies. I told him that 2 men had come in and they had gone out. How was I to know from where they had come? Let him chase after them wherever he will. He's a soldier. I'm just a woman.
But they were spies. You know the fear of the sons of Israel has fallen upon all our people. And if the Israelites find out how strongly the spirit of dejection has seized upon us, they will certainly come in and destroy us all.
What would you have done,
You speak
Zima?
out of a spirit of dejection, Zima. Heather and his men will take care of them.
Would that please you, Obel, my brother?
They're spies of the sons of Israel. They're our enemies. They even now threaten the city.
Then you think the Baal of Jericho is not powerful enough to deliver us?
Well, it's true. The gods of Sihon and Og were powerful gods, too. But they weren't able to stand against Moses.
But Moses is dead, and another man now leads the Israelites. Besides, they're still on the other side of the Jordan River, and the Jordan River is at flood stage. How could they cross over and attack the city? It may be many days before the waters subside enough for them to cross over.
Have you forgotten what their God Jehovah did when he brought the sons of Israel out of Egypt?
Forgotten? What you speak of was before you or I were born, Rahab. How do you know it was not just a legend?
Father, have you too come to believe that this is just a legend? Have you not told me many times what it was that occurred?
Yes, Rahab, my daughter. I have told you many times. You're foolish, Zima, to deny so quickly something you don't really know anything about.
Well,
An awe-inspiring act of the God of Israel.
Tell us about it again, Father.
I can never forget the day that frightened Ethiopian came into Jericho and related to us the account of what happened.
40 years ago.
He had been working in the mines in the wilderness of Sin and was on his way back to Egypt, traveling by moonlight in the cool of the night, when he saw a strange fiery cloud hanging over the Red Sea across from Pi-hahiroth. He started down toward the sea to investigate, when suddenly he saw the waters parting and standing up on both sides.
What a sight.
At first, he thought the shadows of the moon were making sport of him. But then he realized that this was no mirage, but a miracle was happening before his very eyes.
Oh, I can't believe that.
And then he saw a tremendous host of people with all their animals and little ones walking on dry land in the midst of the seabed. And the waters were for them a wall on the right hand and on their left.
A miracle.
The Ethiopians started to turn and flee in terror, when suddenly Pharaoh and all his military forces, his war chariots and his cavalrymen began going in after them, into the midst of the sea. So the Ethiopian watched in amazement until he saw the camp of the Egyptians thrown into confusion. The wheels began coming off their chariots so that they were driving them with difficulty.
Well, that would be disastrous.
They turned in panic and started to flee and retreat, when suddenly, it was at the approaching of the morning, the surging waters of the sea began to come back down upon them and engulf them. All the while, the Egyptians were fleeing from encountering it. But the entire host of the Egyptians was shaken off into the midst of the sea, and the waters kept coming back. Finally, they covered the war chariots and the cavalrymen belonging to all of Pharaoh's military forces who had gone into the sea.
A whole army lost.
Not so much as one among them was let remain.
What a mighty God.
Who can stand against Jehovah?
As for the host that had preceded them, they walked on dry land in the midst of the seabed, and the waters were for them a wall on their right hand and on their left. So it was, just as the Ethiopian reported seeing it.
What a marvelous
Hearing about Father, he could have been frightened. He could have invented much of the story, wandering around in the hot wilderness.
Oh, Zima.
It's no use, Seema. The story has been repeated by many over and over since then. We have all come to hear of it and have been agitated. Birth pangs have taken hold on the inhabitants of Philistia and trembling on the despots of Moab. Even the sheiks of Edom have been disturbed. Should not the inhabitants of the land of Canaan indeed be disheartened? But fright and dread has fallen upon all of us because of the greatness of the arm of Jehovah, and we have become motionless like a stone because of the mightiness of his
why
acts.
then, if the God of the sons of Israel is so powerful, has he allowed them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years? Why did he not bring them into the land immediately, if they are supposed to take over our cities and live in our houses?
That I do not know. But I do know they are now situated across the Jordan River, at Shittim on the plains of Moab, and their faces are set toward Jericho.
Even the prophet Balaam wasn't able to curse them. And he was hired by King Balak of Moab, too, and offered much money. But he could only pronounce blessings upon the people of the God Jehovah.
Happen? Why do these people have to come? This is usually a season of joy. The harvest is nearly in, and soon Baal will fight his great battle with death. Then the rains will cease, and the long, dry summer months will follow. Maybe this horror that has suddenly come upon us will soon pass too.
Oh, Zima.
Yes, I think that soon again the streets will be teeming with the merchants selling their wares, and the men from the seacoast in to sell their purple dye and cloth, and the farmers coming in from their villages loaded down with produce. This is usually a time of excitement and gaiety. Oh, why did these people have to come?
Zima, you talk like one of the foolish women.
Those are idle dreams, Zima. The sons of Israel are here, and they are preparing to attack. Their God, Jehovah, is backing them up, and he's a powerful God.
Father, we know that the God of Israel is a powerful God, and we know that the gods of Sihon and Og were unable to deliver them. Why is it, do you think, that the king of Jericho and his counselors have not considered making a league with the sons of Israel?
What are you saying, Rahab? You mean not even put up a fight? Just surrender to them? Then for a certainty we would all be killed.
You're wrong, Zima. Jehovah, the God of Israel, is a merciful God, and he is certain to give the sons of Israel victory.
Rahab, don't ever say anything like that again. Suppose the people of the city were to hear you. They would certainly come in and take all our lives.
But what Rahab says is true, Zima. The men of Jericho are certain to fall before the God of Israel.
Oh.
But, Father, what would you say if I were to tell you that is, suppose it were possible for me to make some provision whereby we might be saved when the Israelites attack?
Are you serious, Rahab?
What is it you're saying, Rahab? How would such a thing be possible for you, a woman, and inside the city with the doors barred shut?
But if it were possible, would you put your faith and trust in the God of Israel?
Well, Jehovah is a God worthy of our trust. But how could you be sure?
Rahab, there's something you're not telling us. You're not one to talk idly.
You've never been one to be frivolous, Rahab. You're far too practical in your thinking for that.
Speak up, Rahab. What is it that you would tell us?
I must tell you what it is that has occurred. For a fact, the two men who came in here yesterday were indeed spies from the sons of Israel.
Rahab,
Are
you're going
you
to get
sure?
us all into trouble. Now the people of Jericho are certain to find it out, and our lives will be as nothing to them.
Quiet, Zima. Speak on, Rahab.
They came seeking lodging, and I talked to them, and it became apparent immediately to me that they were indeed from the people of Israel. And so it was that when Heather came looking for them, I hid them on the roof among the stalks of flax until the men had left. And then I brought them down and made them swear to me that because I had exercised loving kindness toward them,
Rahab,
that they would exercise loving kindness toward me and toward you, Father, and toward all my brothers and my sisters and everyone that belongs to you. And they swore to me that all of us who would remain in this house would find safety when they would come into the land.
Lies. How could they promise that?
I don't know. This is a serious thing that you've done, Rahab. How can you be sure that they'll keep their word?
Our souls are to die instead of you people, is what they said. And they continued, and if you will not tell about this matter of ours, it must also occur that when Jehovah gives us the land, we also shall exercise loving kindness and trustworthiness toward you. And this is the sign by which our house will be saved. And this scarlet cord is to be left tied to the window, and everyone who stays within this house will be saved. But, they said, that anyone going out of the doors of our house into the open, his blood will be upon his own head, and they would be free from blood guilt.
Rahab, how foolish you are.
Zima, leave it alone.
Do you not know that when it is known what you have done, this very scarlet thread will become the rope that will hang you?
It is by this means that our lives will be saved. You don't need to remain in the house if you wish to go. But if you do remain, you will do as I say, and you will leave the scarlet thread hanging out the window.
You're a good girl, Rahab.
You've always been the most courageous of all of our children.
We must guard your secret well, Rahab. But when that time comes, well, we shall see what the God of Israel will do for us at that time.
Then you intend to stay here? In this house?
I do.
But what of me?
You are my wife. You will remain also. But now we must go quickly and bring the children.
And, Father, you must urge the rest of your household to come here to my house, for only in this way will we deliver our souls from death.
been 3 days now, Rahab, since you revealed to us your covenant with the 2 men of Israel who came here to spy out the land.
Didn't you say, Rahab, that you told the men to go into the mountains for 3 days until those chasing after them might return to the city?
It seemed the most sensible thing to do.
Well, it must be then that they've returned to the camp of Israel and made a report to their leader, Joshua.
That must be why they've moved down to the bank of the river and are now waiting just across the Jordan. They've camped there all night, but little activity's been seen yet today.
How long do you think they'll remain there, Uzzle? And why have they moved down to the Jordan? Can they cross the river at flood stage?
It is strange. A few men, perhaps, but not an army.
What do you think they'll do, Father?
No one can say. It only seems quite clear that the true God Jehovah is directing their campaign. Nothing they've done yet conforms to the usual pattern of our wars. But their movement is as if a mighty mountain were picked up by its roots and were sliding steadily but irresistibly to engulf the city of Jericho. Without the hope that we've placed in the true God, we would be without spirit, the same as the rest of our people in the city.
Well, the uncertainty of this waiting has caused our hearts to melt. I almost wish they'd attack now.
It will come, and when it does, we can only pray to Israel's God that he'll protect us.
Father, why should Jehovah, the God of Israel, protect us if he's going to destroy Jericho and the rest of our people?
Perhaps Rahab could answer that question better for you.
Israel's God is a merciful God and a God of loving kindness.
But Mother says he's going to destroy Jericho.
That's true, my dear. But our people don't worship the true God, Jehovah.
We worship Baal.
Not anymore. Baal is a cruel god and teaches his people many cruel and wicked things. The gods of Canaan are satisfied only with the most degrading rites. And many of our people have even sacrificed their own children in the hope that they'll gain some favor with these cruel gods.
I wouldn't want to be sacrificed to any old god.
Of course you wouldn't. Neither would your father or your mother, nor I.
Is that why Jehovah's going to save us alive?
Yes, my dear, because we've put our faith in him and have shown that faith by treating his people with kindness.
You hid the spies when they came here, didn't you?
Yes, I did. But you must be careful not to talk about that outside of this room, because if some of the soldiers were to hear it, they might become very angry and might even burn our house down.
I'll feel more comfortable when Obel and Zima arrive. I hope Zima hasn't turned Obel's mind away and persuaded him to remain in their own house in the city.
Zima will not turn Obel's mind aside. As for her, well, we must wait and see.
I'm sure they'll be along soon. They were only going to be gone for a short while. And the camp of Israel is still on the other side of the Jordan River.
We mustn't count on anything as obvious as that, Uzzle. That may be a clever ruse. How do you know that a large detachment of their forces hasn't crossed the river at another point? We can't afford to take chances.
Oh, Uzzle, do you think they might? Why, they might even now be laying in ambush outside the city wall. The camp on the other side of the river may just be...
The Israelites are coming.
What?
They've begun to attack the city.
Begun to attack?
Zima, are you sure?
It's just as you said, Rahab.
No, Jira, they're not attacking the city. But they are crossing the Jordan River.
Then Jehovah must be
I knew it would come.
What? Crossing the river?
How do you know?
A messenger came running in just now with the report.
The waters of the Jordan have been cut off toward Adam, and the waters on the other side have rushed on down to the Sea of the Arabah and are exhausted.
And now the Israelites are crossing over the river on dry ground.
Jehovah has parted the waters of the Jordan just as he did the Red Sea. It's a sign, a miracle.
It is a sign.
Surely we can rest our confidence and trust in Jehovah to deliver us.
Yes, we can.
But come now. Are we all here? Is the scarlet cord in place? Is everyone inside the house? Father, Mother, Uzzle, Obel, little one. Little one. Where's little one? She isn't here. Did anyone see her?
Here I am, Rahab.
Oh, little one. I thought you'd wandered outside. Please, don't anyone go out of the house again. It might cost us our lives.
Do you think they're going to attack now, Father?
They are not yet even in sight. We can only wait and see, my son.
It's been 5 days since the sons of Israel crossed the Jordan. And now they've camped right outside our gate and are just sitting there.
They're not exactly outside the gate, Zima.
But they are within striking distance.
True, but there's been little sign of activity in the camp.
It's almost as if they're all asleep.
No.
I haven't seen an able-bodied man walking around the camp for 3 days.
Your eyes are still keen, Father.
Last evening there was some movement, but it looked only like they were preparing the evening meal.
They must just be trying our nerves. There's no spirit in any of those in the city anymore because of the sons of Israel.
And the gate remains barred up, and the soldiers and even the king are just quaking on the wall.
Listen. Rahab, Father, look, they're coming. The Israelites are coming.
Are you sure? I knew it would happen. They've left the camp. What do you mean they're coming? They are coming.
There's a well-equipped force moving out of the camp.
But somehow they do not have the appearance of men attacking.
No, they have the appearance of men marching.
Look, there are the men blowing the horn. Look, Father, those are priests. Priests of the true God.
7 of them, all blowing on horns.
What is that the other priests are carrying, Rahab? I don't know. What? It must be the Ark of the true God. The Ark of the Covenant. But it's all covered up. Very true. It said that no one can look upon the Ark and live. It's a sign of the presence of the true God in the camp of Israel. They're getting very close now.
But still not within bowshot of the city.
Look, they're turning aside. They're not coming toward the city at all. They're going around the city.
Well, perhaps they'll encircle the city first and then attack from all sides.
How can they attack directly against the wall? No, they'd storm the gate or select some other vulnerable spot. It's very strange.
All those horns continually blowing.
And another strong, war-equipped force bringing up the rear.
They're valiant, mighty men. And just think, Father, they all worship the true God, Jehovah. He is going to make his name great today.
They've passed around the other side of the city now. But there's a large force.
Well might the men of Jericho tremble in fear.
Father, do you think they'll attack from the other side of the city?
Oh, I don't know, my son.
The sound of the horn still continues.
They must be continuing their march all around the city.
Look, there are still many people in the camp.
Yes, women and children. And it might even be some more war-equipped forces waiting.
It sounds as though the procession is rounding the city on the other side.
I hear them louder now. Look, here they come again from the other side.
Well, perhaps this maneuver has been to further unnerve the men of the city.
Oh, those horns would unnerve anyone. How can you be so calm, Rahab? What are they doing now? Are they finally going to attack?
Zima, my dear, can you not trust in Jehovah? Have faith. We were given a trustworthy sign by the men of Israel that we would be safe here. Whatever it is that Jehovah purposes to do with his people, he hasn't forgotten us. We can be certain of his protection.
Yes, listen to Rahab,
If only
Zima.
I could share in your conviction, Rahab. It all seems so strange, so frightening. They're turning away again.
So they are. They're going back toward the camp.
You mean they're not going to attack?
It looks like they're returning to camp.
What do you make of this, Father?
I can't say, but it's becoming more certain that they don't plan to attack. At least not now.
You mean we must wait longer? This uncertainty, it isn't over? Oh, if they don't attack the city soon, I'll die from sheer fright.
We must be patient, Zima.
Jehovah is a God who cannot lie. He said that he will destroy Jericho, and he will. But in his own due time and in his own way. Should we question the true God? What he does is right. But is he asking so much of us just to wait? Be strong, Zima, my dear. For Jehovah is righteous, and the upright are the ones who will behold his face.
And this is the 7th day they've marched around the city.
6 agonizing days. And now the 7th. And 6 times they've marched around the city already today. When will they end? Will they never stop? Oh, when do they plan to attack?
Are they turning back again toward the camp?
No, they're continuing around the city. The 7th circuit is beginning.
Rahab, have the 2 men spoken or looked this way once in all the times they've marched around the city? They say nothing. All the men look straight ahead. They neither shout nor let their voices be heard.
Not a word has come out of their mouths since the first day they started to march around the city.
How do you know they haven't forgotten you, Rahab, if they don't even look? Your scarlet cord is there. Why do they not take some note of it? Why should they, Zima? Maybe they're just trying to protect us. If they were to call attention to it in some way, the men of Jericho might become disturbed and come down on us in order to find out what it is that has caught their attention. No, Zima. This is the way it has to be.
What do you think, Father? Does this increased activity mean that the end is near?
It must. But how can we know? 6 days the 7 priests, carrying 7 ram's horns before the Ark of Jehovah, have been walking, continually blowing horns. Now the 7th day, and the 7th circuit around the city. It must mean something.
They're halfway around now. Soon they'll be completing the circuit for the 7th time. Then what will happen?
Oh, no! Rahab, do you think the spies have told all of the men that they shouldn't come into our house? I'm sure something has been arranged. They gave us a trustworthy sign. They said our souls are to die instead of you people. And it must occur that when Jehovah gives us the land, we also shall certainly exercise loving kindness and trustworthiness toward you. Jehovah has promised us, and his servants do not lie. We'll be protected as long as we stay inside the house. Please, everyone, no matter what happens, do not go outside the house. This is the only place where we can find safety. We don't know what the true God will do in order to take the city, but he has provided this place of safety for us. Let us remain here and trust in Jehovah.
They're coming around the city for the 7th time. Father, do you think they'll go around again?
I don't know. We must wait and see.
Have they started back toward the camp, or do they continue?
They continue. They have not yet quite completed the circuit.
Do they still march as before?
Oh, there's no change. They appear strong and determined. Jehovah has certainly put his spirit upon his people.
Look, they're not going back to the camp.
What are they doing now?
It looks like they're stopping.
They have stopped.
Obel, no! Please, don't open the door.
But I can't see.
Then please, Obel, be patient and wait. I fear if the door is open, someone might run out.
They're all facing the city. And look, the priests are before the gate. And the armed men must be nearly surrounding the city.
Listen. I'm scared. It's all right, my dear. Is it thunder?
No, it's the walls. They're crumbling.
Let's get out! We'll die
It's continuing. That's much closer.
Why, everything's collapsing.
Oh, Jehovah!
Rahab, you are here?
May Jehovah be praised. You've come. What a glorious shout it was. Jehovah has truly given you the city.
But come quickly. You and your father and your mother and all your father's household. You must leave the city at once. It's no longer safe here. The city is to be burned to the ground. Follow us, and we'll take you to a safe place outside the camp of Israel.
Come, Father, and all of you. Jehovah has indeed delivered us. May Jehovah's name be exalted to time indefinite.
Boy, I sure would have liked to have seen that.
Just imagine those horns blowing like that all around the city, and 7 times on the last day.
And then the shout just before the walls fell down.
It's no wonder that the Canaanites were frightened half to death.
And especially after seeing the waters of the Jordan River parting and the Israelites moving across on dry ground.
How many were there, Dad?
Altogether,
Yeah.
there must have been over 3 million persons, counting the women and children.
Wow.
There were over 600,000 registered males.
Oh, boy. The soldiers on the wall, watching them marching around the city.
I didn't realize that it was so long after the spies left before they did actually attack the city.
That must have been a test of Rahab's faith, all right.
Yes, it may well have been. Of course, a couple of weeks doesn't seem long to us, but with them expecting the attack any day...
Was it 2 weeks?
Yes, at least. You see, the spies were in the mountains 3 days, though actually it was probably on the 3rd day that they returned to Joshua. Then early the next morning, they moved down to the riverbank and stayed there over that night. According to Joshua chapter 4, verse 19, they crossed the river on the 10th day of the 1st month. But it wasn't until the 15th, or the day after they celebrated the Passover, that they began to march around the city, and that took 7 days. So it was over 2 weeks.
Why did they wait in the camp so long before they started blowing their horns?
It was because Jehovah ordered them to be circumcised. Remember, they'd been in the wilderness for 40 years. Jehovah was punishing them for their lack of faith shortly after they came out of Egypt.
That's when they listened to the bad report brought back by the 12 spies that Moses had sent out, wasn't it?
That's right, Ginny. Jehovah said no one who was 20 years of age or older when they left Egypt would be permitted to enter the Promised Land. Of course, that didn't include the Levites.
And Joshua and Caleb weren't included either because they had brought back a good report, not like the 10 other spies.
That's right. So most of those among the war-equipped force were born in the wilderness, and they hadn't been circumcised. But if they were going to eat the Passover, that would have to be corrected because no uncircumcised male could keep the festival.
That took a lot of courage, didn't it?
Why do you say that, Mom?
Well, they'd need faith in Jehovah's power during that time to protect them.
That's right, because the whole army would be incapacitated until they could recover.
Oh.
Now, what general of this world would dare put his forces in such a vulnerable position?
It certainly shows how small the enemy was in Jehovah's eyes.
What do you mean, Mom?
Well, the Canaanites couldn't lift a finger against Jehovah's people if he didn't allow it. And apparently he wanted his people cleansed right in the land he'd given them.
That's right. And when Joshua had finished circumcising them, Jehovah said to them, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Jehovah's people had to be free and clean before he'd give them the land.
That's why today we have to be clean, isn't it?
Exactly. We have to have a circumcision of the heart. And Jehovah has cleaned up his people since Jesus was enthroned in 1914, and especially from 1919 on. And we must maintain that condition.
And all the while this was going on, the Canaanites were afraid to attack.
That's right, Barry. Here, read what Moses wrote about the Canaanites. It's at Exodus chapter 23, verse 28.
Okay. And I will send the feeling of dejection ahead of you, and it will simply drive the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites out from before you. Does this mean they were so scared they couldn't fight?
Exactly. When Rahab was talking to the spies, she said, "All the inhabitants of the land have become disheartened because of you." Then she told them what they'd heard about Jehovah's mighty acts in drying up the waters of the Red Sea and devoting to destruction Sihon and Og. And then she said, "When we got to hear it, then our hearts began to melt, and no spirit has arisen yet in anybody because of you."
They must have been frightened, all right.
But Rahab was a Canaanite, and she was dwelling in the midst of Canaanites. Why wasn't she frightened?
Because she had faith in Jehovah.
She must have been a remarkable woman, having grown up among pagans and only hearing about Jehovah's mighty acts, to have that strong a conviction.
Yes, because she adds the words, "For Jehovah your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath." Now, Rahab was surrounded by her own people, who were all pagan worshippers of Baal and of other Canaanite gods. And she knew Jehovah had marked them for destruction. Now, do you think she was afraid of them?
No, she wasn't afraid.
You're right, son. She feared Jehovah. Now, do you think she was fearful of what would happen to her or her father's household when the Israelites attacked the city? And those whom she'd grown up with and lived with were dying all around her?
No, the spies had promised they'd protect her.
Besides, the scarlet cord was hanging out the window. That was her trustworthy sign.
I'm sure they must have taken common sense precautions as best they could. But they trusted in Jehovah to take care of them, beyond these obvious matters. Their greatest concern seems to have been making sure they were safely within the house. That was Jehovah's one means of protection for them. So, how do you think we should feel about it today?
Not worry about what's going to happen when Armageddon starts.
And just be sure we stay close to Jehovah's organization.
We can be sure the brothers will help one another, no matter how severely they may be affected themselves individually. We should never stray away from the organization. We need one another. We really depend on each other. If we lose sight of this, we can really become discouraged, and we may have no spiritual strength left for the fight. But whether we're being persecuted by men or suffering in some other way, we should never be downhearted or become frightened, because as Peter says in his first letter in chapter 4 and verse 14, if you are being reproached for the name of Christ, you are happy, because the Spirit of glory, even the Spirit of God, is resting upon you. But you know, there's something else that impresses me about this account of Rahab.
What's that, Dad?
Did you notice where Rahab put the emphasis when she asked the spies for protection?
I didn't.
What do you
What'd
mean,
she
Dad?
say?
It's here in Joshua chapter 2 and verse 12. She said, "And now, please, swear to me by Jehovah, that because I have exercised loving kindness toward you, you also will certainly exercise loving kindness toward the household of my father, and you must give me a trustworthy sign." She wasn't interested in getting life just for herself. She immediately thought of her father and mother and her brothers and her sisters.
That's the same way with us today, isn't it?
It should be.
I wonder, though, if we're all as tactful as Rahab was.
Sometimes we get kind of impatient when we're talking to our relatives.
But if we're really interested in the salvation of others, we'll be so intent on helping them, we'll not get discouraged or fearful. With such a short time remaining to the end of the 6,000 years of human history, well, it's no time for drooping hands or wobbling knees.
I sure would have liked to have been with those soldiers marching around behind the priests.
You can be today. We're marching behind the anointed and preaching. It's the same thing.
What about the shout, Dad, just before the walls fell?
Well, Jehovah's instructions to Joshua were here. It's in Joshua chapter 6 and verse 5. And it must occur that when they sound with the horn of the ram, when you hear the sound of the horn, all the people should shout a great war cry, and the wall of the city must fall down flat, and the people must go up, each one straight before him.
What is the shout going to be, Daddy?
Yes, Dad.
Well, that's something else we don't know right now, Ginny. But we will in Jehovah's due time. Right now, we must be actively engaged in the entire theocratic program. Jehovah's equipping us now for life after the Great Tribulation. And we can be sure that the most wonderful time that man has ever experienced lies just ahead of us. Our generation is destined to see the most remarkable demonstration of Jehovah's power and deliverance ever witnessed by man. The standing up of the waters of the Red Sea and the backing up of the waters of the Jordan will be as nothing by comparison. And just as it was with the shout that went up before the walls of Jericho fell down flat, so the coming of the Great Tribulation and the collapse of Babylon the Great will be preceded by the final great shout of praise that Jehovah will soon direct us to proclaim. And then, when this system has fallen flat like Jericho's walls, Jehovah's people will go up, each one straight ahead of him, and enter into the fullness of peace and prosperity in the promised land of post-Armageddon activity.
I sure don't want to miss it.
Victory that'll be.
Oh, boy.
What a joyful experience it will be to enter into that time and begin to taste of the blessings that are awaiting us. Is there anything we could acquire now or any activity we could engage in that can begin to compare with it? We must keep that day close in mind, anticipate it, so that whenever it does come, we'll be ready. And when the sound of the antitypical horn is heard, we can all shout, for we'll know that Jehovah has given the city into our hand.